Hello, it's October 2023, and I'm going to be talking about something that was very popular over a decade ago, and something that I even talked about over a decade ago. And it really ties in with what's been going on in the world the past few years, and there seems to be a resurrection of this. And I'm going to be tying this all together into the bigger picture of what's happening in the world today. Now, around 2011, there was a movement called Occupy Wall Street. I'm sure many people have heard of it. And if you haven't, look it up. Now, that movement was actually instigated by Canadians. Not all Canadians, a small group of Canadians. And it had to do with, just going off of memory here, a magazine, I believe it was called Adbusters, out of British Columbia, Canada. And they had called out for this movement going against, I'm just going to paraphrase, summarize in the least amount of words, basically capitalism and how life is unfair because 1% of the population controls all the wealth and all that other stuff. But anyway, and this movement, being focused on Wall Street, primarily took place around Wall Street, but it went all around the world. That's something a lot of people at the time didn't realize, that this was a big movement. Now, some of you might be going, well, I think I know where you're going with all this. Just hang tight. So during this movement, there was a church that became a central hub to these people. And there was thousands of arrests. There were, some of these cases were thrown out, dismissed, whatever. There were people who were convicted, and there was 8 primary people being focused on. Keep that number in mind, 8 people. And really what ended up happening was more government restrictions, various governing bodies. And just want to state that this is nothing against or for what governing bodies had done at the time and continued from there, but they imposed more restrictions. That was really the accomplishment of this whole thing, because, as I've said many times, these types of things are allowed. They're anticipating people resisting whatever it is, pick your flavor of the decade, and using those people who are resisting whatever, whether it be real or perceived, to be able to implement, for example, more restrictions. Now, some people, as a descriptive, might call it tyranny or injustice, and those are different, completely different topics. Regardless, that is really what came out of Occupy Wall Street, which again was started by a group of Canadians and spread all around the world. Now, this movement had support of some politicians and various people in positions of authority, celebrities. Everyone was jumping aboard, showing their support, and there's a lot of people, even silently in the background, giving their support to all this. This movement really had no definite, absolute goals. They were just protesting things that, at the time, and never stopped, what they felt was wrong. Tyranny, as a descriptive. And it changed nothing. And I've said over the years many times that protests, marches, and petitions and all these things never accomplished anything. But people still go along and buy into it, and that goes into different flavors of Kool-Aid and everything else, which I've talked about in recent videos as well. So there was no defined goals, nothing was accomplished, and everything just continued as it did before. But as I've highlighted over the years, these things allow an opportunity. They're allowed for people to vent, to deflate people, even at times to defeat people psychologically through different ways. And I've talked about this in older videos. Now, that was, say, over a decade ago. And it seems like every handful of years, there's something new that's allowed to deflate people. Then we have, for example, fast forwarding to these times, we have this Stop Oil movement, and people are protesting, even gluing with epoxy their hands to the concrete and losing their hands, thinking that they're making a change. And we see how this movement is really upsetting people because they're blocking traffic and everything else. And again, no real defined goal, just people are going out doing whatever nonsense they think is worth doing, getting themselves arrested and everything else. Now, this ties into another Canadian movement, which I've talked about. And again, no disrespect to anyone on any of these movements or anything else. People will do whatever they want to do. But this whole truckers' convoy, again, another Canadian movement. And I've highlighted in a recent video one of their leaders or whatever, people who started it all, highlighted some truths about this individual. Again, no disrespect, no malice or ill intent intended, but just there's a lot of things that people don't realize, some truths and facts. But anyway, I digress here. We see the same type of thing happening with Occupy Wall Street and Stop Oil. This convoy thing is no different. And I've said, depending on who you talk to, depends on what the goals were or what people think were achieved. And again, as we see in Wall Street, we see as a descriptive governments being able to impose more restrictions and all this other stuff, because it's all part of the plan. And I've talked even in recent videos about how there's NPCs on all sides. And it's really interesting to sit back and watch. And I'm not the only person, so I'm not saying I'm special. There's other people sitting in between all camps going, wow, looking on all sides thinking, this is crazy. But this is not even about the convoy. It's not really about these movements. Because there's a bigger picture going on here. Because in today's world, what we see going on is all countries are adopting other countries' religious political movements. And those movements and what's going on in other parts of the world is having, or potentially have, a devastating effect on every country that they occupy. And most people have no idea of what's really going on and why. And because of biases in media, on any side of the fence, people are making uninformed conclusions. And there are some people trying to highlight some facts, some truths on one side or even in the other. There's a whole history going on here that people don't know. And that's really the point, without getting into too much detail or anything. And again, always having to calculate words, because this is the world we live in now. I'm just going to segue for a moment. I remember there was a time where the internet, being online, was like what we were told the Wild West was like. Everything was available. None of these nonsensical advertisements popping up every 30 seconds and driving people crazy and whatever. It was just a huge, massive library of information, everything from stupidity to useful things and everything else. So it's really hard for people now to get to the truth, and we can get into even what years ago was called deep fake and all these videos now with the AI technology being able to recreate an individual saying or doing something that they never did, because the computers are generating their image and even their voice. We're in that age now where you can't trust anything. And the reason why this type of technology is commercially available is just for that reason. And I've completely gone off on a tangent here. The real focus being here is how now other movements from other smaller countries, because they had and were allowed to spread themselves all around the world, and now every country has to deal with their problems and everything else. And I'm just going to finish off by saying, in the end, most people, no matter where you are in the world, what side of the fence you're on, just want to get through life, be happy, be with friends, eat, have a nice, warm, safe place to sleep. Most people in the world, the commoners, this is what they want. Even the fact that most people are NPC types, they just want to really get through life. I just want to give you some things to think about, because after this Wall Street example, and when this Stop Oil example, and even the convoy example, once all these things have been and will be forgotten, and all the names attached to them, and all the people that were called heroes are forgotten about, there's going to be something else, another movement, something. And there's going to be other things that people are going to be scared and ranting about or whatever. And my message has been, always been, to survive. Just survive life. This is what we're here. We're just surviving life. This game. And for those in the know what I'm talking about. Anyway, thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share.
Listen to this and write it down if you can't remember it. You're never going to outgrow warfare. You simply must learn to fight. I hear people saying to me, oh, when is it going to get easier? When you die.